I've seen is how this major issue of data being the guiding force in life or death, we could say, is actually what is implicated here. So for me, I teach a course called Planetary AI, which is looking at AI's connections to the larger planet, to the wider planet. And in that, we're looking at the big issues, right? Like not just AI as a system or an interface that we engage with, but something that's embedded in everything. When you go to a bank to get a loan, when you engage with insurance, when you engage with policing, when you engage with security systems, so on. These are all being powered by data computation and correlation. Pattern matching is really the key force here. So for me as a scholar of it, I'm kind of blown away by how AI has come back into the question when 20 years ago it was a big deal, but it kind of receded. But basically the major trend that we see in our lives where data is kind of influencing our lives in so many different ways, and these deductions are being made by algorithmic systems around what we see, what we don't see, what we believe, what we don't believe, what's constructed for us. This is all what AI is. I'm not meaning it in a reductive way, but it's basically the idea of life being computable, correlatable through pattern matching, and influencing our lives in a very embedded way. And I would say the one other big thing I'll say is that private corporations are dominating the AI space. It's several in the US and several in China. And that is something to be reckoned with that as well. I don't think of that as inherently problematic, but what that means on a more democratic justice center level is a big question, given that many private corporations are implicated in our global challenges we face today, from climate to the rise of fascism and so on. So these are things that I'm thinking about a lot in my own case. Yeah.
Thank you. Vishal.
And probably be a little bit myopic on that, but being from a tech provider.
I don't think your mic is working.
It's not.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. I think primarily from a tech provider standpoint, let me be a little bit myopic, right? I think it's glad to see so many people already using AI, and that was not the case 2023. We work with universities, schools, and across the education ecosystem as AWS, right? And some of the largest customers today, the first questions they asked in 2023 was, what is AI? What is generative AI? And there is a difference, by the way, right? What is generative AI? What is foundation models? What is an LLM? I think the questions today are more like, okay, how do I scale up? How do I ensure my cost doesn't go out of? Which foundation model to use? And I'm glad to see already people adopting, Gen AI within their schools and universities here. The top 3 trends which our university customers actually seeing primarily around 3 areas, and probably I'll just take the top 3 around that, is for students, right? I think the most obvious is personalized learning, and we can go deep dive into it. But we worked at one of the largest state universities in the US, where we've actually recommended an AI-led engine for them to, and it actually helped improve student retention rates, right? And we'll talk more about personalized learning, in the coming 45 minutes or so. Second, of course, is teachers, right? I think teachers see it finally as a tool which actually supplements them, which helps them in class summaries, which helps them give students a quick feedback, and then they in turn can work with the students on personalized learning. And third itself is on a much macro perspective, where universities are leveraging AI for curriculum management. They are leveraging AI actually for streamlining their operations, or for that matter, scheduling, resourcing. So those are the 3 broad themes which we are seeing around that. There are, of course, concerns. I think some of the common concerns, which again all our university partners have come back, is, hey, is it safe? Is it secure? What's the cost associated with that, right? So I think at AWS, at Amazon specifically, we are ensuring that AI is a tool for innovation, but it's done so in a more secure way, in a more cost-effective way, and of course in a more responsible way.
Yeah, thank you. And it's quite heartening that probably a lot of us in the room are using AI, which is on trend in the universities as well. But listening to Ramesh, I think we're quite cocooned in our small schools without appreciating all the wider work that's going on. But Vishal, you touched on the sort of risks, and I know in the UK there's a proposal for a lot of legislation and policies around the use of AI. And I don't know, I was reading an article, I don't know if you know, but in the World Cup and in the Olympics, facial recognition programs were used without anybody knowing, and that brings up quite a lot of ethical issues. So in our context within education, what are the main concerns that we should have surrounding the ethics of AI. I don't know, Vishal, if you'd like to continue your points.
Sure, I think it's a great point because, again, AI is not even 4 years old, right, as a technology, and regulations have been around for quite some time. So, specifically, I think as more and more, and I'm assuming everyone's used AI, and if there's one takeaway is that just download a Claude app or a GPT app on your phones and just play around with the tool, right? I think as AI is becoming more and more mainstream, AI didn't exist 4 years back, and today there's an AI app on everyone's smartphone. It's global policymakers are making note of that, right? That it's becoming more stream, and how do we ensure that it's done so in a very responsible way? Because we all know, and we've heard, and media doesn't help, but we've all heard the major risks of AI for that matter. But let me probably give a life cycle model of what an AI looks like in a university standpoint too, and just broadly standpoint. We've all heard the top 4 or 5 models that exist, right, in AI, which is GPT, of course, and there's Claude, and there's Mistral, and there's Llama. These are all basic foundation models, right? What, as universities and what our customers typically do is that they take these foundation models, which are very intelligent in itself, and it's generative AI, so they're always learning, and they actually embed them with their entire customer data sets. And when I say customer, it could be universities, it could be banks, it could be anything for that matter, right? The idea is to integrate these foundation models into your data sets, which is basically your proprietary information. Now, one of the ways and one of the risks of doing that, and one of the concerns, if I could say, which a lot of our customers, from universities to schools to even larger corporations have, is that is this model learning from our data, right? And I think that's the one, I would say, myth, or I wouldn't say a myth, and there are models which do learn. If you are going to be using a free version of a GPT on your phone, that model is learning. Let me put it this way. It may or may not learn, let me put it this way, but if you're using that, it is may or may not learning, is that. But when you're using I would say a professional one, which is done by companies such as ours, we ensure that there are guardrails around the fact that the model doesn't learn from your data. Because these foundation models are going to keep improving. 2023, when Claude 2.5 was there, compared to what Claude 3.5 is today, it's about 40% better, and it's going to keep getting better every year. So I think the key aspect of responsible AI would be that you just need to ensure that these models don't learn from your data. Your data is your proprietary information. Sensitive data is encrypted. And at Amazon, we're already doing that. And we're working with universities to ensure that AI is used responsibly. I think if there are any queries and questions, always reach out to partners such as ours, and we're happy to guide you on that.
Should I go? Okay. So tomorrow I'm going to speak for about 45 minutes on these issues at 2:15 p.m. So you'll hear me go full throttle on it. But I want to give you the Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is kind of long, so I'll give you actually the shorter Wikipedia version rather than the academic Wikipedia version. Think of the resources, the data that forms these pattern matching, these correlation systems, as built upon an infinite library of data. And that data is not just produced by humans, but by non-humans, like machines, systems that monitor, for example, environmental data. So given that, that's why these systems are so exquisite at pattern matching. But I'll tell you the main things we're seeing that are concerns. First of all, these systems we're seeing are mimicking human behavior rather than semantically reasoning, let alone things like emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, non-human intelligence. Trust me, tomorrow I'm going to go hard on this. Second thing we're seeing is a flattening of informational diversity. A range of viewpoints that are critical to a democracy, we're seeing a flattening. Viewpoints are being normalized and flattened, and that's partly a function of what we already see online, where many things we see confirm our biases or make us even go more hardcore, if you will. In social media, we definitely see that, right? Dopamine hits, things going more extreme, and so on. Third big issue is ecological. The energy sources that are powering all of this, where are they coming from, and where do all these phones go when they die? What is extracted out of our planet at a time of profound climate change? Algorithmic bias, we could even say violence. We're seeing many of these systems turn out to be, and this is not because of the developers being this way, racist, sexist, classist, geographically biased, etc. And then a huge issue with economics and labor. What does labor look like moving forward? Who actually will have the political will to ensure that labor is protected, or more generally, economic security is protected? John Maynard Keynes once said that technological advances would turn the planet into a 15-hour work week. That's not what happens here in India. And then the last thing I'll just say is we have to understand these systems as tools that we work with. There's long been a history of humans working with automated systems of different kinds, even automated robots like automatons in the 14th and 15th century. These are the kinds of things, weird things I teach in my classes. So we need to understand human-machine assemblages, human-machine relations, and tools and technologies as catalysts for creativity and care. So I'll go crazy about this tomorrow, but just a few issues there.
So, ask a chemical engineer about ethics. Sure. I agree that, of course, we need policy, we need regulations. And it does seem, especially when you don't know enough about what's going on in that world, it sounds scary. It feels like we are at someone else's mercy. So I think what's the only way forward for us is to learn more. Take Ramesh's class. Maybe he'll come and do this in Zanzibar as an elective for our students, and make ourselves aware. And I particularly hope that whoever's writing policy and bringing regulation does it in an aware way. And, especially today, we don't have an excuse for we can't roll the clock back. And I think that's something for all of us to be aware of. And I'm not scared of it. And I hope that we can take the right step forward by becoming aware and learning more. That's what I think.
Right, okay. Well, I think we'll all be attending your session, Ramesh. So, yeah, thank you. But I think it is that fear factor that is actually, I think even in my school, when we were writing the IB policy to recognise AI, there was fear in that as to how was that going to lead it? How are we going to monitor it? Should we stop it? That all those questions were raised. So I think it is the fear factor. But in my naive approach and belief, I believe that AI will automate a lot of what I do so that I can spend more time training and leading my teams and maybe even becoming a better principal. But I feel that is only one piece of the puzzle, and something that is very close to everybody's heart here is teaching and learning and pedagogy. So, and Vishal's already mentioned personalized learning, but what is the impact of AI on pedagogy? Priti, would you like to start?
Sure. It's very exciting, as I said right at the beginning. As a teacher, I'm very excited by the worlds it's opening out for me and for my learners. I've always felt, and also I teach really boring subjects. Separation of two liquids. How do you extract one from the other by adding a third liquid? And there's a chart you have to draw and tie lines and really boring things like that. So for me, I think it's very exciting. The reason it's exciting is that the mundane things, things like facts and things that people have to remember and understand at a low level, that can be outsourced. That they don't need me to do that for them as a teacher. And we can in a classroom, we can easily go up and do more creative things, analyze the information, apply even what we've learned conceptually into real life situations, maybe even have the time within this whatever 14-16 week semester to really go after that experiential learning, as we call it. Sounds great as a set of words, but really hard to pull off within the time frame of a semester in a class that we have. So for me, I think those are great. The personalized learning part that Vishal mentioned right at the beginning, I think it's important also, because it's never that the classroom is homogeneous in terms of the preparedness with which the students are sitting in the class, aspirations of what they want to get out of that class, and the interest levels in the topic that we are teaching. So I think it really helps that it can cater to the student as an individual. I think these are some of the things I would say at this point.
And I think I was just, hearing you, Preeti, and I was just thinking in terms of how do we make these boring subjects, as you may call it, interesting. I think that's maybe one of the powers of AI which can actually happen, right? Where we actually seeing AI being used as a tool to generate real-time videos, generate real-time images. For example, think about discussing or talking about the Sistine Chapel, right? It's not possible for students to go to Sistine Chapel. Now, futuristically, I mean, it's too early days for AI, but I think my hope is maybe in a decade, we can actually see a real-time Sistine Chapel leveraging AI. And that's what the future is. Again, think about this, right? It's not even 3 years old. Today, the way smartphone has disrupted pretty much every industry imaginable. If you asked anyone in 2007, hey, what's the future of smartphones? No one got it right. Right? Nobody got it right. So I think it'd be foolish and arrogant of us to think what would be the future of it. We'll have to wait and watch. I'm cautiously optimistic as an individual. But coming back to the point in terms of how is it teaching it, how is it changing now? I think again, leveraging personalized learning. I come from a family of farmers, and I was just thinking in terms of I love gardening, right? And think about your students as plants, and you are the gardener, right? And every plant will have a different way to grow, right? You can't just say all plants, all crops require the same amount of water and nutrients. And I think of AI as a tool. You are going to be the gardener. I mean, smart irrigation has existed for the past 25, 30 years. Anyone who's a farmer here will know that farming has come a long way in about 40 years. Do we not still require farmers? We do, right? It's just that they have better systems now. And I think that's what's happening right now, right? We are seeing teachers, we are seeing already university partners leveraging AI as a gardener and spending more time in personalized learning, spending more time being a better principal, right? Doing the actual critical stuff and maybe outsourcing or automating some of the boring stuff, if I could say that, in a better way. And I think helping all these plants, in this case, all your students, to grow in their own nice custom manner.
Yeah, I would say, there's another history. I know I sound like a dinosaur, but there's another history we had where we were building, when I was at the MIT Media Laboratory for graduate school, we were really interested in the learning model of constructivism or constructionism. Learn by doing, learn by making, learn by playing, learn together, right? And we were trying to build computing technologies like Lego Mindstorms or certain types of software programs like some of you know this, like Scratch and Squeak and some of these. We built these things. Like in my lab, we were building these things. And so think about the distinction between technology as tool and catalyst for collaborative learning, creative learning, versus technology as black box container that some sort of, we have the term Oracle, the company, but think about it as what does it mean to learn from an Oracle that tells you what you should know based upon the idea that your life should be data-fied? And ask this question also, what about your life should not be appropriately represented by data? What in life is not calculable? What forms of intelligence are not correlation and pattern matching based? So for me, it's just about engaging with these technologies as creative tools that are catalysts for creativity, for play. Even I ask my students sometimes, like, play with these AI systems and try to understand, try to look at the ghost in the machine, right? So the thing for me is, like, learning is all about doubling down on care, on community, on creativity, and on play. And let's situate AI instead of as some sort of black box, situate it as part of that process.
Thank you very much. I like the idea of having no boring parts of my job. But I just want to add, I don't know if you can see it in the audience, but when I ask a question and the panel answer it, their faces really light up. They're so excited about this topic, which is really great. And I think, to have experts working on AI for us mere mortals that are so passionate and excited about it, it is actually beginning to really reassure me. So, thank you for that. I think the next question links with the conference theme, competition to competency, because I think our initial fears, or certainly my initial fears in the media, was saying that humans are going to be replaced by AI functions. However, the experts now are reassuring us that actually humans with our creativity and with other unique skills, that actually we're indispensable to organizations, and no matter what AI does or performs, that actually people are still at the heart and at the core of organizations such as schools. So, my favorite statement is AI will complement, not replace humans in the workplace. So the next question is, as leaders, can we be reassured by this statement? And also, how do we ensure that our staff succeed in an AI-powered school? Ramesh, I can hear you.
So I certainly don't agree with that sort of promise in any blind level at all. This is a question of political will, and this is a question of choice and values, right? These are choices we must make that are deeply philosophical, and I would say on some level political. How do we wish to live, right? We are already seeing initial research that various waves of automation, but you actually look at industrial automation, agricultural automation, tractors, things like that, we generally see that lower class, working class work tends to be generally pushed aside. We're already living on a planet where 8 people have equivalent wealth to 4 billion. I'm not trying to be a crybaby about it. I'm interested in transformations. My podcast is called Utopias for this very reason. We go beyond this through creativity. So I just want to mention again, the key here is to think more generally about life and about humanity, and then direct technology accordingly. What kind of planet do we wish to live on? And for me, it just gets down to that. So that means all hands on deck, whether it's regulators, policymakers, designers, creator, our brothers and sisters at Amazon and IIT, etc., and the international school in Bangalore. Like, we need all of us to advocate for what we want AI to do and what we want AI to not. The current research shows 40% of existing jobs will be completely transformed, not obsolescent. What does the future look like? Just like the past looks like, just like the present looks like, where we work with machines in the pursuit of a life of security, peace, and prosperity. For me, that's the question. Okay, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Just to probably add to that, right? I think we humans get it wrong all the time. Yeah, I think we've never got right about technology ever. There's this amazing book I'm reading. I'm not sure if you guys have read. It's called Same as Ever, and it just talks about how humans just never get it right because they just live in their mindsets pretty much all the time. And to answer this question, if there's one takeaway I have, right? I think it's just to, as teachers, as universities, principals, as chancellors, as school, leaders, just understand that every tech tool is here to help. And there is not in the history, I mean, of course, as Ramesh pointed out, that we cannot know what's going to happen in the future, but there's no, unless it's like really Terminator is going to happen or something. Hollywood has a way of putting tech as a dystopian future. But the point being that, if there's one takeaway, understand that AI, it's not possible, giving the same gardener analogy I was trying to give you, right? It's not possible for AI to really replace anything for that matter, right? And I think if you understand that point of view, you'll start playing around with AI. I think maybe that's just the first step you need to do, right? And realize that AI is just another tool, just the way smartphone is, right? I mean, if you asked anybody 5 years back, hey, what's the future of AI? You know what we'd say? It doesn't exist, right? And I think that's where it is. I think we'll have to just wait and watch. Things are, models are improving, right? The foundation models are improving for that matter. Use cases are coming up, right? I mean, everyone's still dabbling with, we already have personalized learning as one of the largest use case. Personalized learning, the objective is that you need teachers to be in the center of that, right? As of today, AI is just helping, not even just automating in entirety, it's just helping automate some of these processes, just the way automation has already happened in every field possible. Like, I'm sure you're aware that today surgeries don't happen by doctors anymore. They just use a robot. That's it, right? But you still require a surgeon just the way you require a teacher, just the way you require a gardener to garden, to water a plant. So it's always going to be there. Just keep that in mind, that AI is just another tool. Dabble with it, and the answers will come hopefully in the coming years.
very nice to hear both of them. But what I want to touch upon is the fact that the kind of skills that we value in the future, that's going to change. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, when the calculators were introduced, and I'm sure there's a big hue and cry, oh my God, our young people are not going to know the multiplication tables. They're not going to be able to do math in their heads. And, it hasn't mattered one notch in terms of, how successful they are, and the bright ones, how they're using their maths, even specifically their arithmetic skills as well. So I think we embrace it. And of course, I'm a chemical engineer. I'm going to tell you to embrace everything the technology brings to you. Sorry to bring that up again. But I think all that it will end up doing is change the type of, and who are our stakeholders? Young people are our stakeholders. It will change the type of way in which they grow into adulthood. And I think that's perfectly fine, and it's their world going forward. And, maybe a couple of decades, we are a little bit brave in embracing this strange new occurrence that's happening, and then leave it to them to take it forward. That's what I would say.
I think I want to stay with this a little bit longer because I wanted reassurance that I was not going to be replaced by a robot. But touching on the skill factor, and what is it about us as humans that actually we need to preserve to work alongside and maximize the potential of AI?
So most initial research is showing that people don't want robotic systems. Remember, robot's not just like a C3PO or some like transformer or something. A robot can also be software based, right? So the AI extends to both all these domains, including embedded in infrastructures, like I mentioned earlier. So most research is showing that people don't want robotic systems to care for their children. No duh. Or care, I mean, at least in my case, I don't have kids though yet, or care for their elderly parents or grandparents, right? Touch doesn't matter. We tried to build such robots at the Media Lab and people freaked out when we had like Furby-looking robots, Cynthia Brazel's lab. That's one thing we see. Another thing I'll mention is creativity. Kamala Harris recently, who I might be working for, recently called for the care economy, and who knows what really happens, and the creativity economy. These are things we can double down on. We can have a tripartite economy, which I'll talk about tomorrow. And there are some jobs of the future that could be really cool. Data ethicists, cultural information designers, archivists. What about memory and history? These systems are using historical data, but they're ultimately ahistorical, if you know what I mean. A deeper vision, a long view of history. There are so many jobs that can work with the transformations in these systems. So that's why I have a sort of utopian vision, not because of any blind faith in any of these technologies, but because I believe in the spirit and power of life and human creativity and care.
Thank you. Pretty.
I was just going to say love and respect, and I know that was anyway the theme from the morning over here, and it's hard to make that, and we shouldn't make that go away, and that's what we really bring to the table, I think.
Yeah, and again, just to probably add to that, what Ramesh was also mentioning, it's not, think about this, right? When I remember, when I was much younger, when video conferencing was launched, I think about 15 years back in India, there was this ad that came out by this telecom company that no one's going to be in the airports. Did the airport industry die because video conferencing was launched? I don't think so, right? Similarly, when when autopilot happened, and when in flights, we're like, oh, you don't require pilots anymore. And again, going back to the fact that we do not, there is no argument around the fact that the jobs of tomorrow are going to be looking very different. But humans are going to be in the center of it always. Look at the $1 trillion industry the smartphones have come up with. Tell me an industry which smartphone has not disrupted. Has those industries died down? But the jobs have changed, right? The way you travel has changed, the way you shop has changed, the way you communicate has changed. It's just opened up a different level of jobs. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with AI too. Right, I think AI is going to cut across every sector pretty much possible. I think the last disruption in tech, and we techies keep discussing it all the time, is that it's actually the smartphone. Post smartphones, there was no technology that disrupted every sector imaginable. And I think hopefully, we are the era where smartphone was 15 years back. Remember, smartphone was launched in 2007. right? Look at what's it done in 17 years, and it's still changing, it's still transforming. All customers moved towards an app. I do not know any other large customer who did not move towards an app, right? And I think that's what's going to happen. I think again, not I don't have a magic mirror, and I could be completely wrong, but humans get it wrong all the time. But I think just given the backing which AI has seen, I don't think there is any technology apart from smartphones which pretty much had the backing of every large corporation enterprise worldwide, right? And I think that's where the push is going to come in. Jobs will be different, but in a good way. I think the good part is that I know there's been a lot of fear and uncertainty. I remember reading it somewhere that, hey, critical thinking is going to go away, problem solving is going to go away. That's not going to happen now. And I think I know as again, right, governments will intervene and there will be responsible AI, right? Just the way there's a responsible internet today. And yeah, I think humans, have word and always been the core of every interaction that's possible.
That's heartening, because I think so much of what happens in our schools is about the relationships, isn't it? And the connection and the collaboration. And, thinking back to COVID times, there was a lot that we missed and a lot that couldn't be done because we weren't together. So, phew, I'm reassured now. Now, we want to leave some time for questions. So this is my last question to the panel. If there was, say, 2 pieces of advice to give to leaders, educational leaders, of how to move forward with AI in their schools, what would it be? Priti, would you want to start?
I think it's the same thing as it was expected of us all along. Look all these young people in the eye and make sure that we give them what they deserve, whatever it is in terms of education, in terms of awareness about what they can aspire for, and just, a positive note on what the world could be for them. I think that's what I would say is our role. Despite AI looming at us, so to speak.
Vishal, piece of advice.
Yeah, I think as I said, as I saw the number of hands where everyone's already started playing with AI, right? And I think it's perfect. Right? I think start small to begin with, right? You'd be surprised at the amount of evolution that's already happened in Gen AI, and I like saying it Gen AI and not AI because there's again a significant difference, right?
Can you explain?
Well, I mean, let me put it this way. It's like Gen AI just learns by itself. It's like the futuristic could be dystopian, like a Terminator, right? It's not going to happen. But that's exactly what the difference primarily is. That it has a better way of learning by itself more compared to just regular AI, right? Again, just going back to the one point where we've seen universities and schools adopt globally, start small. And the amount of, again, I don't know if many people have heard of this. Has anyone heard of Copilot or Amazon Q? Yeah, there you go, perfect, right? I think about this. Years back, these chatbots today can be so personalized to schools and colleges at a fraction of a cost, right? That was not the case 3 years back when AI was launched. It was quite expensive to build your own chatbot. Not anymore, right? It's actually a couple of hundreds of dollars a month, and you can have a up and functioning AI chatbot, a foundation model integrated with your data set. And students can actually get access to a remote, question for all the FAQs right there and then. So again, that could be one of the most easiest use cases which we are seeing a lot of our, university and school partners adopt. Start small, learn, start from one department, and then scale. Right? I think that's just maybe one takeaway you have is that learn and be curious and start small.
Yeah, I mean, in the classroom is an amazing site for recognizing what we maybe all know implicitly, that we need one another, right? We need that. Humans are relational animals, and there's something powerful in community. So my first piece of advice is establish community. We say in Buddhism, sangha, sangam in Tamil. So it's like this is like really, really important, whether it's Zoom, technologically mediated, which we all had to teach, during COVID, or in person. Like, let's get back to that touch and that collective physical proximity, because something magical happens. Like, I'm just learning so much and I'm gaining so much. I have so much energy because I'm with all of you right now, right? So this is the practice. And the second is AI literacy. What does literacy mean? Well, it's the ability to take alphanumeric symbolic representations of concepts, put them in your mind, process it, reflect upon it. That's Walter Ong's great work on literacy, right? What does it mean? What does that mean in relation to AI? Algorithmic literacy, data literacy. Instead of these being like hypey brand terms, let's like really unpack, demystify, look through black boxes and engage in play. And these are the two things that I try to do in my classes at UCLA.
Thank you very much. Now, questions and answers. We have been asked by Michelle to come onto the floor. I don't know whether that's to check we're not robots or would you? Yeah, androids. Yeah. Would you like to stay here or? Yeah. Let's get that sort of community connection by going down. Questions? I'll do the roaming mic if you've got one that works. This lady here.
Good evening. Thank you for the fabulous discussion. It was really mesmerizing. My question to you, of course, all the experts, is how much of AI is too much in a school scenario, right? As a head of school, where do I draw the line? And for heads, we are always grappling to, adopt to the change. I was so happy that I became an expert in Chat GPT, and then somebody told me, "Did you try Meta?" So where do we draw a line? And for me, as a head of school, security is topmost on the radar. So what are those alerts or those pointers that we need to lay as a policy so that my students are safe? And finally, I'm sorry, just one last question. It's very dear to me. Every second parent wants the child to take up data sciences, data analytics, and they've forgotten everything. So is there a saturation point which is going to be coming? What do we advise parents? How do we guide them? Now, these are pressing questions. Thank you.
It was a very long question, actually, so I already forgot. What was the question? Where to draw the line? Yeah, I think, as I said, to begin with, start small, right? I think first and foremost, recognize that there's a difference between AI adoption in schools and AI adoptions as a consumer. It's quite a significant difference, right? The models which we all use as free versions, and if you want data security from that, it's not going to happen. If you search Google search is free. Your data is going there, right? So I think recognize the fact that what is my use case? Don't try to solve every problem on planet Earth. I think the top 3 use cases, as I've said, is personalized learning for teachers, is class summarization, right? And I think AI-led chatbots. The second and third, you'd be shocked to know how easy it is to implement that, and how cost-effective it is to implement that, and how secure it is for that matter. Right? Of course, you have to buy an enterprise version, which, by the way, is quite cheap. It's just a couple of hundreds of dollars, and you can actually have running live AI-led chatbot for your school. That's how easy it is. It was not the case a year and a half back. It is the case now. So we are going to continue seeing progression. I'm convinced about the fact, from a tech standpoint, the cost is going to keep coming down. Security is going to keep increasing. And of course, use cases are going to keep expanding.
I'm going to go after your second question. I'm a parent too, I will say this, but parents, they're really a pain. I don't know.
Someone said it is not.
No, seriously, I don't think they know enough to be so direct. I'm sorry to say this, I apologize in advance. To be so directing about choices that their children are going to make. I understand that they have the best interest of the child at heart and so on. pushing a child into whatever, whether it is data science or it is architecture, etc., is doing a disservice to the child, of course, to themselves as a parent, because that's parenting one don't do 101, and third to us in colleges, because we get this disgruntled child that is in our classroom trying to teach her liquid extraction, just doesn't care about it, and so on. But really, I want to roll back the jokes and say that I'm sure there's a lot of potential for young people to be studying data science and AI. I'd love for lots more of them to apply to us and be successful and in the exam and come to IITM Zanzibar or to our Chennai campus. But having said that, I think the role of the parent in sort of pushing the child into this should be minimal at best, is what I would say.
Yeah, I would say, my cousin in Chennai literally just called me the other day, like really, really, really anxious about how she gets her son into a top data science undergraduate program at either at UCLA or around the US. So this is literally the conversation I was just having. We can even ask the question whether data science actually exists. Is there a science to data, or is data actually just sort of a mediating force in life, right? So that forget that, but just like put that aside. But I think the real interesting question is here's my Western, I was born in the US, so I'm just being honest. Like, I was pushed into engineering. I'm really glad I did it, because now I approach it as you can tell, a humanist, an anthropologist, a policymaker, a million other ways, right? But at the same time, I would just encourage your kids not to blindly bow to this just because there's a hype associated. It is a real hype. It's definitely here to stay, but I think it could be part of one's education. But I would just encourage all of your kids or your families, nieces, nephews, etc., grandkids, to just explore, develop literacy, even maybe computational literacy around this data stuff. But don't start and end your inquiry there, because the big questions are yet to come, as you were just saying, right? So it's, as Michelle was saying, so it's like really, really important to have a broad-based education. A broad education, including the liberal arts. Don't forget the liberal arts. They really matter more than ever, especially the humanities. It's hilarious. People are like, Ramesh, you have multiple engineering degrees and you've turned into a humanist. I've always been a humanist, right? So we can just have cross-disciplinary education. That's what we try to do in our best moments at UCLA when we're not fighting with one another.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. The microphone's over there. Yeah.
My question is that how do we make our children conscious users of AI? As in, we talk about digital cocaine, we talk about addiction. So how do we make them conscious consumers of AI or users of AI?
I can start that one and then pass over. There are three key hormones that are part of data capitalism or digital experiences: dopamine, cortisol, and adrenaline. These are, I talk to endocrinologists about this, even in some of my research, right? So what we need to do, one of the things I do with my students, these are 18 to 21-year-olds. They're awesome. I love them so much. And a bunch of them are Indian citizens, which is great. And one of the things I do is just have them, I used to be able to get away with doing this for 3 days or even 7 days. I say, take just a break while you're awake, 12 hours. Now it's down to 12 hours. I negotiated with them with no digital screen-based interactive device. They're like, can I surf for 12 hours? I'm like, sure. Can I hike? Do whatever. Not because it's a negative thing, not because it's a detox, which is the way it's framed, just so you understand your own relation to these things. Because we know very, very well that social media systems in particular are designed to be addictive. And for women in particular, they're highly correlated to depressive onsets. And they give you the feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out. You're never good enough, right? And those are algorithms that are using correlation to make deductions around what will grab your attention. So that's very, very bad. We don't want AI to go in that direction. So try to understand our own lives without sort of bowing to these things or letting these things be us. That's the big thing for me.
Yeah, so it's more not a question, more of some sharing my experience. I'm from a DCM group of schools in Ludhiana, Punjab. So we offer AI curriculum starting from grade 3 onwards. So in my personal life, I think like you, Ramesh. I I limit my involvement in any sort of AI. Whereas in designing school curriculum, I'm more like what her opinion is. But one of the events that we conduct, annual event, it's Metaverse. I just want to share an experience. One of the competitions were decoding. So the kids of grade 6 and 7, I do not even understand. For me, that is Japanese and Chinese. A code, already written code, is given to the kids, and they enter it into the computer and they decode it. So the kids these days are of the competitions they can participate are different. At their age, we were probably making some windmill model and everything in the school. So things have changed. Accordingly, we need to design the school curriculum, which we are doing. But in my opinion, where to limit is the routine school events. School practices like timetabling, result analysis, all sorts of things can be AI, modulated, right? Whereas when it comes to any academic aspects, we have to be really careful, because even when we use ChatGPT or that sort of thing, we are able to read, go through it, and probably make changes if in case the computer gives us some wrong information. Whereas the children do not have that knowledge. They would start to believe in that. So once a teacher came to me and she said she uses ChatGPT. I asked her, can you make a speech on Jammu and Kashmir or Arunachal Pradesh? So you do not know what the ChatGPT is going to give it to you, because this is system generated. It depends on what is actually entered or fed in there. So this is the challenge, how to use, where to draw the line. But that is the, this time we cannot completely put a stop to this. And data science, I believe that there is no such thing. Science is set of data. Without data, there is no science. So this is, people are misusing that terminology. But anyway, these are the things. And in my school, we have a lab we started last year. It's coding and data science lab. Whether I believe it or not, but we have to do it. So this is the scenario. Thank you.
Check.
Then we'll take one at the back.
Hi. I just wanted to ask your opinion on something, because I think it's great that loads of people put up their hand that their schools are moving forward with AI and ChatGPT and all of those things. And obviously the children are way ahead of most of us who are working in the schools as well. One thing that concerns me is that at the end of the day, these children are assessed by external bodies, such as IB, such as Cambridge IGCSE, A-levels, whatever. What are we doing to bridge that gap? Because if we are taking the children forward and we're doing wonderful things in school, but at the end of the day, they've got to sit down with a paper and pen for 2.5 hours to do IGCSE history, are we failing them by, leading them down a pathway that isn't being followed by the assessment? So what has got to change in the assessment to bring these two together? And do you know of any assessment boards that are doing anything about assessing, AI-assisted learning in schools?
No, this is obviously this is a fantastic question, and I wish there was a better answer to this. I think that only thing I can say is that when it comes to the college curricula, we seem to have, especially autonomous institutions like ours, have a little more control over how we define not only the curriculum and pedagogy, but also how we do the evaluations. And we can definitely ensure that the evaluations take into account the fact that we've allowed, within quotes, the students to use whatever form of AI that they have, that they would like to. But I completely hear your point that I know the IB rubric, and I know how strict that is, and I don't think that if you stint on the time that you spend in learning in the way that you will be assessed, you're not going to come out on top. So maybe in answer to the previous question of where to set the limits, it should be that the student should be well aware that while they can use these aspects for their convenience and to maybe speed up their learning, the goal of the learning itself, that goal post really does not change, because that is there in the final evaluation from the external boards. That's what I would say.
And I think, education moves at a very slow pace, and we are behind already, even though IB recognises the use of AI and they have to declare it, and you can test it on Turnitin and all that. But if you look at, say, the IGCSEs and how they've got to learn and what they've got to learn, or CBSE, it's way behind this. And what you have is a learner who's very reluctant to do anything else but use AI and new technologies. So all I would say is we have regional meetings of IB, and we're putting pressure on IB in Cambridge to actually look at this. They've got to. IB, we're one of the pilot schools for online IB exams this November, but that is not addressing the issue at all. And it comes back to the skills and what attributes have we got to encourage our learners to have to move on to universities who are way ahead of us as schools. And I do feel quite frustrated that we are so far behind. So I think it's up to all of us to voice our concerns and to put pressure on the boards. I really do think that. One last question from very patient people at the back. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Riddhi Agarwal. I belong to a family that runs schools across India, particularly Delhi Public School in Gujarat and in Gurgaon. And I'm also the founder of Acadeli, that leverages AI to make personalized assessments for students. Now, my question is, how do we make sure that there's a balance between human intervention and AI? Because learning is essentially a social experience, right? So for us, AI is an enabler that can automate some of the repetitive and mundane tasks and free up educators to do what they do the best, that is, connect with the students and build those human relationships that are at the heart of learning. And according to the World Economic Forum predictions, it states that critical thinking and problem solving will be the most important skills for the workforce. So can we have educators and make them role as a facilitator or a mentor that can foster these human skills that are at the heart of learning? And my second question would be, how are we ensuring that there are regulations and guardrail in place for social media? And how do we ensure that there are no deep fake AIs that are actually one of the biggest fear for parents for their kids? Thank you.
Who can take the first one? I can take the second, or join.
Yeah, sounds good. So I don't think there's one number like 10% of learning can be outsourced to non-human, etc. Each of us as a teacher, and you rightly said, the most important thing that we do as teachers or teacher administrators is build that relationship and the connection with the student, so that they can learn in the best way that is best for them, actually. So I don't think there's a number. In my own class, for example, I do use some of those automated, not really personalized so far, but automated type of assessments, etc. And maybe 10-20% of my final grade will be from there, whereas a large portion of how the student performance is evaluated is pen and paper and how they interact in the classroom and so on. So I think each of us have to figure out who our audience is in that particular class, not even across years and so on, and do the best thing, because after all, end of the day, it's for them. So it's hard to make a formula, is what I would say.
On the second question, yeah, thanks. On the second question, so I've worked with regulators and policymakers in a number of different countries. In Brazil, I've talked to people here. In India, in the EU, which is far advanced, I would say, compared to most of the world, and yes, in the United States. And I'll speak for the U.S. issue. In the United States, we are, I don't know how to put it in a better way. I think we're corrupted by lobbyist power, and our elections are not actually truly democratic, and we have a duopoly in our system. I'm just being honest about how I feel about it. I'm saying that as a registered Democrat who worked for Biden and will work for Harris, saying that. So as a result, actually, we saw, for example, with the push to try to ban TikTok. I know it had its own reasons here in India. That was being pushed by our social media companies, with like Meta, etc., who are not particularly great citizens, I would say, when it comes to really being divulging with the public. So this is, of course, what happens, right? I don't blame any corporation for maximizing their valuation or their profitability. Sometimes it's one or the other, like I'll talk about tomorrow. But I do think that there are checks and balances that are part of any democracy. And a lot of my friends in Europe who've passed really powerful legislation, GDPR, the AI Act, the Digital Markets Act, the DCA Act, they actually think that they are behind when it comes to technological innovation. I don't know how you, as British, feel about it since they Brexit, but but I actually remind them the web was created in Switzerland, and it was created just like the internet was created in a non-profit, non-commercial setting with taxpayer funding. That was the web. So I think that the question of how we can push regulation is a big thing. I've written a few pieces for The Guardian on what I call a digital bill of rights. In the US, I work closely with one representative in Congress who's Indian American like me, Rohit Khanna, and he's as smart as it gets when it comes to these things. But the thing we find in the US is there's bipartisan consensus that they don't like big tech, at least no offense intended, to social media companies in particular, but for very different reasons. The Republicans think it bans free speech and it's censorship. Us progressives think it's about justice, equity, and just greater voice and a more deeper democracy. So maybe there's enough will. 48 out of 50 attorney generals have sued Meta/Facebook. But it's a mess, just like, honestly, the political situation in the US is pretty soap opera-like right now.
All right. Well, thank you very much. On your behalf, I don't know about you, but I've certainly learned a lot from this session. And also, I was thinking while you were talking that if there are a sort of core group of experts who have your mindset and your ethics and your reasons for developing, then I think we are going to be all right, actually, at the end of the day. So thank you very much for your input, and we've really enjoyed it. Don't forget Ramesh's session tomorrow. And Zanzibar, the island of spice, is awaiting us all with the courses. So, and don't forget to use Amazon. But thank you very much, and thank you very much for your questions, and I'm sure they'll be available at the end.